Hi friends, welcome to my channel. This is your Govindraj. Thank you very much for all your views, subscriptions and likes, and also more importantly your comments, and also sharing my videos to all your contacts, and thank you very much. And today I'm going to talk to you on a very important topic which is related to employment of women and also the labor codes. What are the special provisions which are brought in the labor codes, especially with related to employment of women? Are there any restrictions are still available which are existing today in the current labor law? And I'm also going to talk to you on how about gender diversity in the labor codes. Are there any special provisions which are related to gender diversity, or the labor codes are going to do anything about increasing the employment of women in industrial establishments or private establishments? And this is the topic which are going to discuss today. And if you look at the current law, there are various restrictions placed on employment of women, especially during the night shifts, and also there are certain restrictions of employment of women in certain critical operations and critical establishments, or kind of an hazardous process establishments. Are there anything like this in the labor codes, or these restrictions are going to be there in the labor codes? That is the point of our discussion today. And of course you may also know that a majority of the states have already relaxed these restrictions, and they have relaxed these restrictions, and they have brought their own amendments to both shops and establishment as well as Factories Act 1948. So with reference to these employments and especially working conditions, there are a few laws which are, especially the state law which is related to shops and establishment, and also the Factories Act. And in terms of mines and in terms of plantations, they have specific regulations. Now the labor codes are going to consolidate all these different laws, and there are 29 laws are going to get consolidated into four codes, which you already know. And I have been talking all these important provisions in my channel. Of course you have already watched it. Now I am going to give you an update on this very important topic, friends. Let's proceed on this topic. So, as I have told you, if you look at the current law, especially the Shops and Establishment and the Factories Act, and more importantly, the Factories Act, the woman cannot be employed for more than 9 hours in factories. And of course, there is no overtime is possible if you clearly and strictly look into the provisions. And of course, woman is not required or allowed to work between 7 p.m. and 6 a.m. in factories. And even if the government wants to exempt from these provisions or restrictions, those exemptions cannot lead to employment between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. And also, as I said, the many state governments have brought amendments and also released their rules, and they have relaxed these conditions and restrictions. Of course they have put certain conditions which are related to basically safety and health. So considering that, now let's see what the labor codes are bringing it to you. See, first of all, if you read the text of the labor codes, and especially occupational safety, health and working conditions, the employment of women, whatever the restrictions were there, all restrictions are removed. And also restriction for employing women during the night shift is also removed. But however, if you want to employ women or continue to employ women before 6 a.m. and beyond 7 p.m., then her consent is necessary. And of course that employment will not be easy, and also it will come with a certain restrictions and also provisions which you need to adhere, basically which are related to safety, holidays and working conditions. And there are other conditions which can also be prescribed by the appropriate government. And moreover, considering the nature of the employment, whether it is related to hazardous or dangerous, or these kind of specific types of employment, the appropriate government can also prescribe additional guidelines, either before employing the woman and also after employment of women. So these additional guidelines can also come to you considering the rules of your states. And these are the important provisions which are put in the labor code, especially in occupational safety and health code, occupational safety health and working conditions code 2020. in section 43 and section 44. These are the two important sections, and this sections and this chapter deals with special provisions related to employment of women. So barring this, and there are certain provisions for employment of women during night shift are also brought in the central rules, which is currently draft. You can go to see rule number 67. It will talk about there are certain prescribed conditions which you need to adhere if you are employing the women employees before 6 a.m. and beyond 7 p.m. So any kind of establishment, if you want to employ, then you need to adhere that first of all the consent is necessary of such woman employee, and during the maternity benefit period or against the provisions of the maternity benefit provisions, the employment cannot be possible. So these are the important things have come. And also you have to make sure that you provide adequate transportation from residence for pickup and drop of such women employees, and in the working area there should be adequate provisions and facilities including separate toilets, washrooms, drinking water, and also the area where the women employees work should be adequately lit. That means there should be sufficient lighting should be there, and so that there is no fear for the women employees. And of course your area should be safe and secured environment, and if they are employed below the ground, especially in the case of mines, there should be at least 3 women along at the working place if you are going to employ these women employees below the ground, especially in case of mines. And more importantly, the employer should make sure that the provisions of POSH Act, which is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, which is Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013, the provisions which are enumerated in this important law have to be adhered. Very specifically, friends, one is the internal committee should be constituted, and there should be a proper redressal of sexual harassment complaints, and the women, if there are any issues, should be given with proper assistance, and these are all have to be complied, especially if you are going to employ women employees at your establishment. And now I am going to give you certain provisions which are there in the other codes. We only talked about the provisions which are related to occupational safety and health and working conditions code. Now let's look into certain provisions which are available in the other codes, which are basically helping or promoting the employment of women, and whether it is directory provisions or voluntary provisions. And if you look at the Code on Wages 2019, there are advisory boards in case of minimum wages, and other provisions of the code are going to get constituted, and in these advisory boards 1/3 of the members should be women. So this is an important provision which is coming up. And secondly, now these boards can also advise the government, basically the appropriate government, on providing increasing employment opportunities for women. Now these boards can also make a study and give a proposal to the government where the employment in which kind of establishments the employment of women can be increased. And by virtue of section 42 of the Code on Wages 2019, especially subsection 9, now there is a possibility that the state government or the appropriate government may give direction to increase the employment of women in private establishment. So this is a directory provision if the advice is received from the boards constituted under Code on Wages 2019. Of course, there is a prior opportunity is required to be given to such establishments and such employers, but after having all this done, then the state government or the appropriate government can give a direction to these private establishment to increase the women employment or women employees in their establishment. So this is the important provision which is coming, and which is a very good news in terms of increasing the gender diversity in your establishment, or increasing the women population, women employees in your establishment. And now I'll give you one more example which is coming up in IR code 2020, there is a mandatory condition which where if you have 20 or more workers, you are required to constitute the grievance redressal committee. And if you look at the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, it was talking about adequate representation of women, and it was not very mandatory. Of course, the grievance redressal committee was not enforced, and that section was not enforced, and now we will see all the possibility of enforcing this important provision. And this GRC and this provision is going to talk that there should be a women representation in proportion of women workers to the total workers employed in the industrial establishment. So the membership of the women in grievance redressal committee should be proportion to the women members or women employees in such establishment. This is one of the important provision which has been brought, and in terms of increasing gender diversity in your establishment. So friends, so far I gave you the information which are related to employment of women in labor codes, and also if there are any restrictions or not restrictions, we talked about it. We also talked about the current provisions, and we also touched upon the important provisions in other codes. If you are going to read these provisions, of course you will find many more examples like this, and my idea is to give you certain brief information and also give you an update on these topics. And if you want to talk to me, my coordinates are provided here. You can always get in touch with me if you have any clarifications. So thank you friends for watching my video so far. And if you find this piece of information is valuable and has increased your knowledge, please do share this to your contacts. And I have been teaching all these labor codes and labor laws and labor information, labor relations information so far, and I am sure you have been getting benefit from my channel. And if you would like to share this information, please do share. And if you have not subscribed this channel, please do subscribe. And more importantly, your comments are important, and if you want to know any specific topic, you can always put into the comment box, so that depending on my timelines I will come back to you. And more than anything, the best Guru Dakshina you can give to any guru, that you share this information and don't keep it with you. Share it to as many people as you want, so that they also get benefited by this information. Thank you very much friends, and see you soon in the next video with important information and new and very specific information. Thank you very much friends.